Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. If you're returning to the channel, thanks so much for tuning back in, and if you're new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And to everyone, of course, if you enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, and if you have something to say about what I had to say today, don't forget to leave a comment. Now, obviously, because you guys have already read the title of the video, you know that today I'm going to be wrapping up my February reading. As you can see, I am sitting in my car instead of in my room as I normally do for my videos, and that is because it is a beautiful day today, beginning of March, and I've decided to come out to the park for a run. I'm not actually in the park parking lot right now, I'm like in a deserted shopping mall parking lot because I have social anxiety about filming in front of other people, and there's people in the park parking lot right now, but that's just how it goes. And so I'm just, sitting outside in my running clothes about to go do that. But I thought I would film the video really quick out here in the natural light instead of my ring light. So doing that. Anyway, I don't think anybody cared about why the background is different, but that's why. So anyway, I had a pretty good reading month in February. I don't know if it's just me, but even though February is only like 2 or 3 days shorter than every other month of the year, it feels significantly shorter, and it feels like you just don't have enough time to accomplish any of the goals that you set for yourself in February. So I wasn't really expecting to read that much, but I did get through 5 books, which was really awesome, and I was pretty impressed with that, honestly, because I also had just like a really busy month with work. But anyway, I'm sure no one cares about any of that. You just want to hear about the books. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first book that I read in February was The Vanishing Half by Bennett. Now, this is a super popular book and won several awards last year, so I won't go into too much detail about the synopsis, but essentially it follows 2 sisters, Desiree and Stella, who are from a town called Mallard in Louisiana, and they basically leave this town, and they are both very light-skinned black women, but they choose to live very separate, different lives. Stella goes off and actually passes as a white woman, ends up marrying a white man, and kind of spells out her life that way, and Desiree lives her life as a black woman and eventually returns to Mallard with her daughter, and then it kind of follows both of their daughters' lives as well, and it's a really interesting exploration of what race really means and what identity is, and the choices that we make that define what our identity ultimately ends up being, and how much of that is just based on something like the color of our skin, which we can't change, versus the choices that we make and the things that we choose to embody, and how that kind of plays into whether we are truly happy in the end or not. So I thought this was a really fascinating exploration of a lot of different issues. It wasn't even just about race. It talks, about the transgender community. There's a character that kind of is going through that transition and talks about his journey, going through that. There's so many issues related to just family, acceptance, identity, just a lot packed into one book, but I think it handles all of those things really, really well. So I thought this was a fascinating book, and it's the type of book that will definitely kind of stick with you for a long time. I think the things that are discussed in this novel are things that are probably going to be top of mind for me for many months and years to come. So I'm really glad that I read this. And Bennett has another book, The Mothers, which is apparently quite good as well, so I hope to pick that up soon. And I actually read this as part of my book club at work, so I've kind of discussed it to death with some of my colleagues, but I'm really glad that we chose to read this book because I really enjoyed it, and so did so many other people, so I don't think it's that surprising that I liked it, because it's just such a lauded book. I mean, I got this from Book of the Month, and I was their Book of the Year, as you can see from this golden sticker on the cover. So yeah, this was great. Highly recommend. I think it's a very prescient book. It's timely. It's very well done. Bennett is an incredible novelist. So highly recommend this one. The next book that I have to talk about is Priyanka Chopra Jonas's new memoir, Unfinished. And I surprisingly really liked this book, and I actually have another video where I review this book in more detail, so I won't go into a ton of detail here, so you can just watch that video when it comes out if you're interested. But basically, if you don't know who she is, she's obviously a very famous celebrity, but if you don't know who she is a Bollywood star and kind of started her career winning the Miss India and then Miss World pageants, and then kind of launched her career in Bollywood, became a huge superstar there, and then jumped over the ocean, came into the American media space as well. She starred in Quantico, which was in a show about like an FBI agent on ABC, has been in a ton of movies, obviously really famous, married to Nick Jonas. What more is there to say? But the thing that I found was really interesting to me when I picked up this book was a lot of the Indian American community actually doesn't really like Priyanka Chopra Jonas that much. There's a lot of animosity towards her because of this perceived sort of rejection of her Indian identity, and I think she really delves into that quite a lot in this book, thinking about sort of how she balances being an Indian superstar but also being someone trying to make their name in Hollywood and in the American media space, and kind of balancing those two different parts of her identity, which as an Indian American myself, I kind of found that those things spoke to me, and it can be hard when you're from an immigrant background to sort of balance, the people that kind of want you to retain your culture and retain your, sort of mother tongue, mother native land identity, I don't know. But also there's this pressure to assimilate into the new country that you're a part of and the new culture that you're a part of. And it's hard to kind of figure out what the appropriate balance of the two is. So I think her discussion of that was really interesting. I personally actually picked up this book because I wanted to sort of understand more of the nuances behind her acting methodology and how she approaches her art and her creativity. And she doesn't actually delve into that in a whole lot of detail. So I personally was a bit disappointed about that, but I don't think many people are picking up this book in order to read it as like the memoir of an artist, but more so to read the memoir of someone who's had an interesting background as, balancing superstardom in two completely different spaces in the media. And so I think in that regard, if you're interested in her life story and kind of her insights on that, it's great. I think she did a good job of it, and it's a fun read. It's quick. You can probably finish it in like a day, honestly. There, are some things that are a little questionable, which is like, any celebrity, I feel like, but I enjoyed this on the whole. But it didn't have that sort of art discussion that I was hoping for, but that's fine. The next book that I'm going to be talking about is Misadventures of Awkward Black Girl by Issa. Now, if you haven't heard of Issa, what are you doing? She's so funny. So she's basically like a comedian and actress and producer and director and kind of the whole gamut of production, basically. I was introduced to her through the show Insecure on HBO, which I love. It's so funny and just, gets at so many important insights about life in America and sort of the Black community and the Black experience in America, but in just such a funny way. So I think she is just an incredible artist in that sense and just makes super prescient, super interesting, yet super funny content. So love that show. So I picked up her memoir, which I enjoyed it, but not that much. Like, I think if I didn't like Issa as much as I do, I would have found the memoir to be quite, not that great. I think it was just kind of scattered. There were some discussions in there that just like felt kind of random. Like she didn't really know what to put in some cases. It was funny, but I don't know. At the end of it, I kind of felt myself like, okay, let's get this over with. I kind of got it. Cool. And it was just a lot of jumping around. So there wasn't really kind of the narrative that I was hoping for just wasn't really there. But overall it was funny, but I didn't enjoy it like as much as I thought as I would. And maybe part of it is, I was listening to it via audiobook, so I wasn't always, paying complete attention. I did think listening to it via audiobook was a good idea because it's actually narrated by Issa. So, her style of telling her own story is obviously going to be superior to just reading it on a piece of paper. So I enjoyed that part. I thought it was really funny, and I enjoyed some of the anecdotes in there. I just think on the whole, the narrative structure was not quite there, and it didn't keep me as gripped as I was hoping, but it was a good discussion of her life and her story and kind of how she's come to where she is today. So enjoyed that part. The next book that I have to talk about is Three Strong Women by Marie Ndiaye, who is a French Senegalese author, and this book basically revolves around, it's kind of three novellas, honestly, that are intertwined in some cases. You kind of hear references to the characters in the different stories in each story, which is interesting. But it basically follows three women kind of living between France and Senegal as well. It takes place in both countries. And it's an interesting discussion of women who have sort of had to rely on men for much of their lives, whether it's a father or a husband or, you know, what have you, and kind of how they're able to extract themselves from that reliance on men and how they're able to sort of develop their own identities. It was a very hard-hitting book that was difficult to read because there are some really graphic descriptions of really, really difficult events, including rape, including death, including loss of or inability to have children, loss of family, all sorts of just really difficult to read issues. But I think it's done in a really beautiful way and in a moving way. So it was a very emotional read. At times it got difficult to get through just because it was so emotional. But I thought it was a fascinating look at a culture that I know very little about. So it was a fascinating look into the lives of some women who kind of straddle those two cultures and what that experience is like, and just a really wonderfully done depiction of how women can establish their own independent identities, free from sort of being held down by men in certain ways. So I thought that piece of it was really wonderful, and I really enjoyed it. And then the last book that I have to talk about is Watchmen by Alan Moore. I just realized that the title isn't actually on the cover, but it's here on the side. So this book is actually a graphic novel, which I don't really read that many graphic novels. So this was kind of new to me. I didn't really know what to expect going in. It's like a superhero graphic novel is all I kind of knew. And I found it at the library, so I just picked it up. And I thought it would be sort of quick to get through, but it's actually kind of a thick book, so it wasn't actually that quick to get through. But basically this kind of takes a look at if superheroes were real, and it's an alternate history. So it takes place sort of throughout sort of the latter half of the 20th century. And it talks about if superheroes were real and if they were kind of assimilated into our daily lives, and if politics kind of really played a role in how superheroes operated, and we had to sort of control them because they were treated as vigilantes rather than sort of, the can't do wrong Marvel type superheroes, which I thought was really interesting. I thought it was kind of cool as someone who's a fan of things like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or The Boys on Amazon, those types of shows. It was kind of a good combination of those two. Really interesting look at how people who are behind the mask would actually behave in situations that kind of made them, made them feel more like real people than a superhero. So it was very graphic, of course. I think like on the first page, there's just like a ton of, it starts off with a murder. So there's like blood all over the first page. There's a part where they show like a dog's head cut in half, which was a little jarring to see illustrated. But yeah, so it's very graphic, very real, very hard-hitting, kind of depicts the realities of politics and war and what it can do to people, even if they are superheroes, and really kind of removes that romantic notion of what it means to be someone with, superhuman abilities, but still very human mental processes. So I thought it was a really interesting look at that. And I'm not sure if it really made me a comic book nerd. I don't think I am. I know there's, tons of fandoms that are obsessed with books like this, which is awesome, and I think that's great. But I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed the graphic novel format. I thought it was fun. I thought it kind of felt like a happy medium between reading and watching TV in some ways. But yeah, I was just kind of trying it out, and I don't know, maybe I'll incorporate more graphic novels into my reading. I did also enjoy Persepolis when I read it last year. Obviously very different. It's a memoir in a graphic novel format. But yeah, so it was cool. It was a fun experience. I enjoyed it. Don't know if I'm going to be reading a ton more of superhero comics, but yeah, I think it was a good read. It was cool, and it was a good entry point into this whole world of comics as it is. So yeah, those were the 5 books that I read this February. Like I said, I was pretty impressed with the fact that I was able to read 5 books in a shorter month that was pretty busy. I'm looking forward to March because I'm actually going to be moving and going to be living elsewhere from where I normally live, which should be a lot of fun and should be a nice change of pace. And I'm hoping to get a bunch of reading done this month. So yeah, it should be good. I'm excited for the spring to get started and for the dreary cold weather to go away, and hopefully people to all start getting vaccinated and things to start getting back to normal in a post-COVID world, hopefully. So yeah, I think all things considered, life is going good. I hope it's going good for all of you guys as well. And thank you so much for watching, as always, and don't forget to leave a like and comment and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video, but hope everyone's doing well, and bye-bye!